My daughter Tara abandoned me for her stepmother and cut me out of her life. Years later, she reached out because I'm doing better financially than her mother, asking me to pay for her expensive wedding. I'm genuinely happy that Tara has a strong relationship with her stepmother, Danny. To provide some context, my relationship with Tara's father, Mark, was troubled from the start. We were young and thought marriage was the right thing to do. When I became pregnant with Tara, Mark tried to be a good father, but he was largely absent in his responsibilities. I handled everything: feeding, changing diapers, staying up all night, bathing, and taking Tara for walks. Mark was the fun parent who would spend an hour with Tara when he got home while I cooked his meals and cleaned up. After dinner, he'd retreat to his den to play video games. Whenever I asked him for help around the house or with Tara, he'd insist it was a woman's job, as he believed that was how things should be according to God. Our disagreements often left me pleading for help, but he refused outright. Once, when I was too sick to move, I asked him to care for Tara so I could rest and recover. Instead, he argued with me, calling me lazy and insisting his mother never asked his father for help. This infuriated me, as he was just as much Tara's parent as I was and had never lifted a finger. I finally told him that if he didn't start helping out, I would leave. Although this shocked him, he grudgingly agreed to help. As my maternity leave was ending, I needed to take a short leave of absence to catch up on sleep. I asked my mother if she could babysit Tara during my working hours, and she kindly agreed. Mark's mother never offered to help, but I wasn't concerned about it. Mark wasn't happy that I was going back to work, as he had been pushing for me to become a stay-at-home wife for a long time, but I had always refused. In hindsight, I'm grateful I didn't quit my job, since Mark lost his job when his company downsized. This loss was a shock to both him and the other employees affected. When Mark told me, I wanted to panic because we needed the income for household expenses and Tara's care. However, I knew that panicking would only make him more anxious, so I reassured him that I would cover all the household expenses until he got back on his feet. With him unemployed, I asked Mark to look after Tara so my mother could get a break from babysitting. Initially, he was reluctant, but eventually he agreed. Every day I came home to find Mark on the sofa, playing video games with Tara on the floor nearby. Basic needs like meals and baths were often neglected, and I frequently found Tara hungry and unkempt. This situation made me extremely frustrated. I was working hard to support the family while feeling guilty that my daughter was being neglected. During this period, Mark and I argued more frequently. He claimed he was trying to find a job, yet he never went to any interviews. After 6 months of staying at home, Mark announced that he wanted to enroll in a business course. Mark had always wanted to start a business, but I didn't think it was the right time, as I wanted him to find a stable job first. However, he had already discussed his plans with his parents, who were willing to cover his college fees. I was the last one to hear about it, which made me feel undervalued as his partner. In hindsight, I should have left then, but I stayed, continuing to work and care for Tara while Mark went back to school. Eventually, Mark graduated and started his own business. It was doing well, and he began hiring employees, including Danny, a young, energetic woman hired as his personal assistant. Mark and Danny spent a lot of time together, but I didn't think much of it at first. The idea of him cheating never crossed my mind. However, Mark started introducing Tara to Danny every time he took her to the office and insisted that Tara and Danny spend time together. This made me suspicious, so I directly asked Mark if there was something going on between them. He denied it vehemently, claiming I was overreacting. I let it go until a friend called me one day to say she saw Mark and Danny holding hands at a cafe. From her description, I knew it was Danny. I was mortified not only by the betrayal, but also by the thought of everyone finding out. That evening, I insisted that Mark invite Danny over for dinner, claiming I wanted to meet her since she worked with him. Mark had no idea I had evidence of his infidelity. During dinner, I confronted him directly, stating that I was done with the secrecy and that I knew everything. Mark was left speechless. Danny went pale as a sheet when I confronted her. I told her that at this point, I didn't care if she was involved with my husband. Our marriage was beyond repair. Danny admitted that she was in love with Mark and apologized for everything, saying it wasn't supposed to happen. Mark then questioned why I had invited Danny if I already knew about their affair, accusing me of embarrassing them. He claimed he wasn't going to apologize because, in his view, I had been the one to fail our marriage first. He accused me of not trying hard enough to keep him satisfied and said I was too focused on my independence. I shook my head in disbelief and reminded him that my work was what provided for our family while he was unemployed and then studying. Mark argued that I should have left my job once his business started thriving, but I countered that we needed both our incomes to secure our future. I was infuriated by his attempts to deflect blame and pointed out that I had never neglected him or Tara, managing all the household chores despite working full time. I had no tolerance for his excuses. Ignoring his continued blame, I looked at Danny and mouthed, "Good luck," before excusing myself from the table. I knew what needed to be done. In a way, Mark was relieved from the burden of finding a reason to divorce me. I had once loved him, but after Tara came into our lives, we had merely become roommates living under the same roof. I had been handling the bulk of the household work, so I had nothing to lose by leaving Mark. I packed my bags and Tara's belongings while Mark repeatedly asked what I was doing. I told him I was leaving and that I would be sending him divorce papers soon. He tried to argue, saying I was being too cold and that we should take some time to reconsider, but I felt there was nothing left to think about. I had had enough and went to stay with my parents for a while. If you're wondering whether his parents reached out to comfort me, they did not. They never said a word to Mark about breaking up our family. It was only later that I learned why. Danny wasn't just young, she came from a wealthy family, and marrying her would secure Mark's financial future. Honestly, I didn't care about that. My main concern was to ensure that Mark and I could co-parent effectively for Tara's sake. From what I could tell, Danny seemed like a decent person, so I hoped she would be a good stepmother for my daughter. During the divorce, I received half of Mark's assets, which was substantial given his business was thriving. I used that money to buy a home for Tara and me. We had shared custody. I took care of Tara from Monday to Friday, while Mark had her from Friday evening until Monday morning, when he would drop her off at school. Immediately after our divorce, Mark let Danny move in with him. Tara would return home excited, telling me about the expensive dinners and amusement parks she visited with Mark and Danny. At first, I didn't notice anything unusual, but soon I started to observe that my daughter seemed different. Tara started detaching herself from me more and more. I was the one enforcing rules, making her finish her homework, teaching her to do chores, like washing her own dishes and folding her laundry. She resented that I made her eat healthy food and refused to let her order fast food every day. She also insisted on expensive gifts, which I felt were inappropriate for a child. In contrast, Mark and Danny were the fun parents, taking her out and indulging her. On weekends, Tara would spend her time watching TV and eating good food. She often told me how relaxed and enjoyable their home was, and if I didn't agree with her, she would say hurtful things like wishing she lived with them. This broke my heart, but I tried to stay patient, understanding that she was just a child. When Tara was 12, Danny became pregnant with twins. Tara was anxious and repeatedly asked me if Mark would still love her once the babies arrived. I reassured her that her father's love wouldn't change. Her anxiety grew so severe that I had to discuss it with Mark. He eventually spoke with Tara and reassured her that things would remain the same between them. However, Tara decided she wanted to spend more time with him, and Mark agreed, so she began visiting him on Wednesday evenings in addition to weekends. With the arrival of the twins, Mark told Tara they would convert the basement into her new room, and her old room would be repurposed. This decision was made without my input, as Tara had become increasingly focused on being part of Mark's new family. She shared less and less with me, and after the twins were born, Mark informed me that for the next 2 months, Danny didn't want Tara to visit because she wanted to focus entirely on the twins. I confronted Mark, arguing that this would deeply hurt Tara and make her question whether he still loved her. Mark insisted that Danny and the twins were his top priority and he needed to be there for them. When I broke the news to Tara, she was heartbroken and kept asking why Danny didn't want her around anymore. I did my best to comfort her and reassure her that it wasn't her fault. A month later, when Mark came to pick Tara up, she was ecstatic. She couldn't stop talking about how adorable the twins were and how beautiful her new room in the basement was. I agreed that her new room was lovely, though it stung a bit that she had to give up her old bedroom for the twins. But if Tara was happy, that was what mattered most to me. As time went on, Tara started finding more excuses to stay with Mark, claiming she loved helping babysit the twins because Danny sometimes needed a break. This infuriated me, and I forbid Mark from using Tara as a substitute babysitter. He argued that this was a way for children to bond, but I insisted that Tara shouldn't be responsible for tasks like changing diapers and feeding bottles. After some argument, he agreed. When Tara found out, she yelled at me, saying that Danny had informed her of my complaints to Mark. Tara insisted that she wanted to help with the twins and that she felt this was her way to fit in and earn Mark and Danny's love. I assured her that my intentions were to protect her and that I wanted her to be valued and loved, not exploited. Tara began to favor Danny over me more and more. While I never had any personal issues with Danny, it was painful to constantly be compared to her. As Tara entered her teenage years, her behavior became increasingly harsh. One incident that stands out is when, after a long day at work, I was relaxing at home with some ice cream, and Tara came out of her room and called me a fat cow. I was shocked and hurt, especially since I wasn't overweight. When I asked her why she would say such a thing, she told me that Danny had taught her that gluten makes people fat and that she wasn't allowed to eat gluten at Mark and Danny's place. I explained that while gluten might not be great in excess, it wasn't inherently bad and that body shaming was unacceptable. As time went on, Tara seemed to transform into a mini Danny. She became increasingly critical of me and adopted many of Danny's habits and attitudes. She refused to go out with me during the day to avoid tanning and insisted on skipping breakfast to lose weight for a bikini Danny had bought her in a smaller size. Tara weighed herself daily and recorded her weight in a diary. She told me that Danny had encouraged her to stick to this routine with the promise of potentially participating in beauty pageants. I was furious when I discovered this. Up until then, I had never directly spoken with Danny about these issues, but I realized I needed to address it. Enough was enough. I finally reached out to Danny, hoping to address my concerns about Tara's behavior. However, Danny dismissed my worries, saying she had only suggested Tara consider participating in a beauty pageant, and it wasn't her fault if Tara took it too seriously. I pointed out that Tara viewed her as a second parent and that Danny should be more mindful of her influence. Danny responded by suggesting I should push Tara to be the best version of herself instead of trying to hold her back. Her response took me aback, and I asked her to keep her personal ideologies to herself. Later, Mark called me, furious that I had spoken to Danny this way. When I explained the situation, he backed Danny's viewpoint, saying Tara should not take Danny's advice so literally. I argued that Tara was clearly being influenced, but Mark seemed indifferent. I tried to talk to Tara, urging her to enjoy her teenage years without stressing over trivial matters like weight or tannin. Unfortunately, Tara remained stubborn and closed off, shutting down any attempts at open communication. Watching her drift further away was heartbreaking. She even stopped consulting me on decisions, like school trips, preferring to wait until she saw Mark to have him sign the forms, despite me having no objections. It felt as though I had become a mere spectator in Tara's life, and I struggled with depression during this period. However, during this challenging time, I met someone who changed everything for me. Henry and I met when I was at my lowest point, and as our relationship developed, he saw how much Tara's behavior was affecting me. He tried to reassure me that every teenager goes through a rebellious phase, but things only seem to get worse. Tara and I were constantly at odds over her declining grades and missed assignments. During these conflicts, she would often blame me and make hurtful comments, like understanding why Mark left me for Danny. These remarks were a sore spot for me, and they broke my heart each time. I hate to admit it, but I started to distance myself from Tara. When she turned 18 and it was time to discuss college, she and Mark came to see me. I assumed it was about college expenses and was prepared to offer to pay half of her tuition. However, Mark stunned me by saying Tara wanted me to relinquish my parental rights. I was shocked as Tara told me she had been contemplating this for some time and wanted Danny to officially adopt her. I was initially so taken aback that I thought it might be a nightmare. Tara, with tears in her eyes, pleaded that she loved Danny more than me and wanted her to be her real mother. I asked her to explain her reasons, hoping to change her mind. Tara spoke earnestly about feeling a stronger bond with Danny and admiring her stepmother's qualities and achievements. She also mentioned that being legally adopted by Danny would make her part of Danny's inheritance, as Danny's parents had indicated. As Tara poured out her heart, I struggled to contain my emotions. It felt as though my world felt like it was crumbling around me, as if everything I had worked so hard for was slipping through my fingers. The realization that my daughter no longer saw me as her mother was a devastating blow, one that left me reeling with a profound sense of loss. Tara kept pleading with me, saying that she had always seen Danny as her real mother and urging me not to fight this. Mark agreed with her, telling me that I should respect Tara's wishes and not take it personally. In the following weeks, I faced an incredibly tough decision. Despite the pain overwhelming me, I knew I had to consider Tara's feelings. I couldn't force her to maintain a relationship she no longer wanted, nor could I deny her the chance to find happiness on her own terms. My parents tried to reach out to Tara, but she refused to take their calls. I was engulfed in a whirlwind of conflicting emotions, mourning the loss of the bond we once shared and grieving for the daughter I had known. Amidst this sorrow, there was also a sense of resignation, a quiet acceptance of the inevitable. I cried frequently in front of Henry, who was my rock through this painful period. Even he saw the cruelty in Tara's actions and struggled with the situation. With a heavy heart, I reluctantly agreed to Tara's request, knowing it would mark the end of an important chapter in both of our lives. While I won't go into the legal details, the process took a few weeks. Eventually, Tara and I were legally separated, and Danny proceeded with the adoption. After the adoption, Tara essentially stopped communicating with me. The pain of those days is hard to describe. I had lived for my daughter, and watching her drift away from my life was excruciating. I must admit, Henry played a crucial role in keeping me afloat during this dark time, never leaving my side. Henry was a beacon of support during my darkest days. He encouraged me to seek therapy and moved in with me to provide the care and stability I desperately needed. I even left my job, and he took care of everything while I focused on my recovery. I was diagnosed with depression and started on medication, but Henry's unwavering support gave me a new reason to keep going. Gradually, I began to heal and stop blaming myself for everything. Henry suggested I join his business to stay occupied, and I agreed. His support extended beyond just emotional help. He truly became the partner I had always deserved. Over the past 6 years, I worked alongside him, helping to build his business. He made me an equal partner and valued my contributions both professionally and personally. We married and built a fulfilling life together. Despite the heartache of the past, I found joy in simple pleasures and embraced the new life Henry and I created. So, when Tara called me out of the blue yesterday, I was caught off guard. Her unexpected call stirred up a whirlwind of emotions I thought I had buried deep. She asked about my life and shared updates about hers. I was surprised she reached out after so many years, but I was glad she remembered me. Despite everything, she was my daughter, and I continued to love her unconditionally, regardless of the pain. I hoped that Tara had matured and wanted to reconnect, but as the conversation progressed, it took an unexpected turn. Tara mentioned her upcoming wedding. The realization that my baby girl was getting married stirred up a mix of emotions. Then Tara revealed that she was calling because she wanted me to contribute to the wedding expenses. I was taken aback. I was taken aback when Tara revealed that Mark's business had suffered during COVID and never fully recovered. She also mentioned that Danny had refused to contribute to the wedding expenses, wanting to save money for their twins. Tara admitted that she had been keeping tabs on me through social media and knew that I was doing well with Henry. She asked me to cover the wedding costs, saying that I owed her given the circumstances. My initial feelings of joy and excitement quickly turned into shock and disbelief. It felt like Tara was being incredibly entitled, especially considering she had left me behind. I told her politely that while I was glad she wanted to reconnect, I couldn't just forgive and forget the past. I reminded her that she had asked me to give up my parental rights so Danny could adopt her, and she had chosen Danny as her real mother. I didn't see why she now needed my financial support for her wedding. Tara argued that I was still her biological mother and that it wasn't fair for me to have money while she struggled. She insisted that giving her a few $1,000s wouldn't be a big deal for me. I made it clear that while I wished her all the happiness in the world, I couldn't just write a blank check to cover her wedding expenses. Tara became furious, hurling insults at me and blaming me for abandoning her and not fighting hard enough years ago. It felt like she was grasping at straws to justify her actions. The conversation quickly deteriorated, and she angrily hung up. Now, I'm left wondering if I should have helped my daughter despite everything. The emotional turmoil of the call and her reaction has left me questioning whether I made the right decision. Update. I never anticipated that my previous post would gain so much attention. The sheer volume of responses from strangers on Reddit has been overwhelming, with many advising me not to concede to my daughter's demands. Initially, I felt immense guilt because, after all, she is my daughter. However, seeing your comments about how Tara might be using me has made me question my own judgments. As a parent, it's incredibly difficult to stop loving your child, even if they don't want you in their life anymore. Tara will always be my baby, but I have to accept that she is now an adult and, frankly, appears entitled. Mark and Danny haven't reached out to me, so it seems they are unaware of Tara's request for financial help. After discussing this with Henry, I've decided not to offer any assistance. Update 2. Following your advice, I sent Tara a message. Dear Tara, thank you for reaching out and sharing updates about your life. It means a lot to hear from you, and I'm glad to know that you're doing well. Regarding your request for financial assistance with your wedding, I want to be honest about where I stand. While I understand your desire for support during this significant time in your life, I must respectfully decline. Given that you chose not to have me involved in your life, I believe it's best for us to maintain the current distance. It's important for me to prioritize my own well being and boundaries. I wish you all the best as you embark on this new chapter and hope you can understand and respect my perspective. I hope this helps clarify my position and bring some closure to this chapter. Thank you for your support and guidance. Update 3. So it turns out Tara did see my message but left me on read. It seems that the majority of you were right. She wasn't genuinely interested in reconnecting. She just wanted financial help without any regard for our past. Henry is frustrated with how Tara has treated me and has suggested that I block her to prevent any further unwarranted requests. I was previously conflicted, but now I see that this is probably the best course of action. For those concerned about my will, please rest assured, although Henry and I don't have children, he has nephews and nieces, and we plan to leave our estate to them. Thank you all for your support and advice throughout this difficult time. I will focus on my own well-being and continue to cherish the loving relationship I have with Henry.